Hello and welcome to this new edition of the Foojay Podcast. In this episode, we'll talk about JavaFX, the framework for building user interface applications with pure Java.
Welcome to the Foojay Podcast, all your news about OpenJDK.
JavaFX was introduced by Sun Microsystems in May 2007 and provides a platform for desktop, mobile and embedded applications built on Java. Libraries and software are available for the complete lifecycle of an application to run from a single codebase on Windows, macOS, Linux, Android, and iOS. JavaFX was originally part of the JDK, the Java Development Kit, and became a standalone technology in 2018. The development is a joint effort between Oracle, Gluon, a small Belgian-based company, and the community. Let's talk about the JavaFX framework itself, but also about the libraries and applications that are built with it.
My name is Gail Anderson. I'm a Java champion. I've been involved with JavaFX since its original release. With Paul Anderson, we wrote Essential JavaFX, which was commissioned by Sun, and it covers JavaFX scripting, which is JavaFX 1, no longer relevant. But more recently, I contributed chapters to the definitive guide to modern Java clients with JavaFX 17, with also Johan. I specialize in creating JavaFX mobile applications for iOS and Android using the same source code. With Paul, we co-founded Anderson Software Group, which is a training company specializing in Java, JavaFX, and other programming languages and technologies.
My name is Dirk Lemmermann. I'm independent Java/JavaFX consultant based in Zurich. And I've been working with UI technologies ever since I started my professional career in '95 with AWT, then Swing, moving over to JavaFX in 2013. I really like to write open source libraries and publish them on GitHub. And obviously on Maven Central, things like GemsFX, PDFFX, a lot of projects that end with FX. And I also developed a commercial framework called FlexGandFX for planning and scheduling applications. And I'm also, I'm wearing many hats, but I'm also part of a startup in London where we try to come up with a CRM solution for the energy market in the UK. And I'm also a Java champion.
I'm Johan Vos. I'm also Java champion. I started to work with Java in 1995 when it got started, and I contributed to the Linux port, which was a community effort, and that brought me in the tradition of fixing stuff that the big companies don't want to fix, which is somehow how I got involved in JavaFX as well. I'm currently the co-lead of the OpenJFX project where the JavaFX specifications are created. And I co-founded a small company, Gluon, in order to support JavaFX for the wider community, where we make sure that JavaFX works fine on desktop, mobile, and embedded, and where we provide commercial support. And we have some JavaFX-based frameworks as well. And mainly the mission is to drive JavaFX to make clear to the Java developers that JavaFX is very relevant and very suitable for many client-based applications.
So my name is Pedro Vieira. I'm a freelance consultant. I'm a software engineer in the software design. I own a software consultancy company called Duque. It's a company specialized in the development of beautiful, usable, and well-functioning graphical applications. Besides providing software development services, it also provides user interface design and user experience services. I sometimes join a team of developers, but sometimes I also do the development of the application myself. Regarding JavaFX, I've been using it professionally since its very first beta version. Like Gail mentioned, the first versions used the JavaFX script. At the time, I created a component that allowed to integrate JavaFX scene into a Swing application, which wasn't possible at the time with JavaFX. And I published in JFXtras. I've developed a number of applications in JavaFX. Some of these were for very high-profile companies. I'm currently finishing up an application for a Fortune 500 company, but unfortunately, I wasn't clear to talk about it. I also contribute to open source. I have a number of JavaFX libraries, which I develop in my spare time.
And I'm Frank Delporte. I used to develop Java and JavaFX stuff, but since this summer, I'm a technical writer at Azul. And out of interest, I'm making these podcasts and talking to people like you about all these amazing technology. Now, Johan, maybe start with you. You are the co-lead of OpenJFX. Can you give us some information, insights about the state of the JavaFX project itself?
JavaFX is a bit a strange project inside the Java community because it used to be not a part of JDK, then it was part of JDK, then it was not part again, and now it can be downloaded again. So it's a sometimes confusing history. Who is actually working on JavaFX? Well, let's start from the beginning. As you mentioned, it was released in 2007 by Sun Microsystems as the successor of the F3 project. The goal was to create a new language for client development and user interface development in particular with Java, because Swing and AWT were created a long, long time ago, and the graphical world did evolve a lot. So JavaFX was created by Sun engineers and maintained originally by Sun engineers to have an answer for Java on the client and making it relevant on the client again. Actually, Java originated on the client, and so JavaFX was the logical component of the Java ecosystem to work on client systems. Sun was developing it. After Oracle took over, it was Oracle that was mainly contributing to it. And when JavaFX was made open source, everyone could join. But the hurdle in those projects was very, very high to get started. And I was originally looking mainly at JavaFX on mobile and embedded. And especially when support for JavaFX mobile was dropped by Oracle a long time ago, I continued working on it. And that's when I co-founded Gluon. So we had JavaFX working on iOS and Android devices. Now, Oracle went one step further and did not only drop JavaFX Mobile, but they dropped the JavaFX marketing and evangelization. That was a major issue for the image of JavaFX, but it's important to mention that Oracle did not completely drop JavaFX on the desktop. Oracle has always been a very great contributor to the OpenJFX codebase. Even though the headcount was reduced drastically, the quality was still very, very high. And I think that is really important to mention, that the people contributing to OpenJFX have really high standards. When Oracle reduced headcount, I was asked to step up as being the co-lead of OpenJFX and to be more involved in the JavaFX core development. One of the things that I really wanted to do is to make OpenJFX development more accessible to a wider community. So we were the first OpenJDK project who moved to GitHub. That lowered the barrier for contributors to contribute to OpenJFX. And what we saw over the past 5 years is that more individuals started to contribute to OpenJFX. So today, JavaFX is mainly developed by people from Oracle and Gluon, but definitely also by many other individuals or small companies. It's pretty interesting to see that this is indeed small companies that are contributing. It's sometimes annoying because the big companies are not really contributing, mainly because of stupid political decisions and history. But it's great to see open source contributors from different backgrounds contributing to OpenJFX. It doesn't make the life of a project lead easier, because we see that there are so many different angles that people can look at. People with different backgrounds, scientific, medical, financial, more business oriented, and so have their own view on how JavaFX should evolve. So, and we have contributors in all those areas. So that is who is working on JavaFX.
If you look at the releases, so since a few years, JavaFX is also following the same cycle of releases like Java itself. So every 6 months there's a release. JavaFX has the same version number as Java. Does that mean that there are also that many new features introduced, or is it bug fixes, or what should we see between these versions?
Yeah, in this area, we completely follow the procedures that are also used by OpenJDK, so by the Java development kit itself. Sometimes a feature takes much more time to implement and to be tested than you originally thought. So then you have two options. One is you go for feature-based releases, and that means that you can say in advance, when we release JavaFX version, whatever, it will include this, but we can't say when it will be released. The second option is you go for time-based releases, and then we can say in advance JavaFX 20, for example, will be released in March 2023, guaranteed, but we cannot say what will be in there. Mm-hmm. You can combine both, but then you cannot guarantee the quality. We choose for train releases, where it's very predictable when the next release is going to be released, but it's not predictable what exactly will be in the release. We find that for most developers and library maintainers and users, it's more important to have predictable release dates. It's also what, for example, Ubuntu and other Linux distributions are doing. You know when there is going to be a release, and if a feature doesn't make it for that release, it can always go in the next release. We didn't have to follow the OpenJDK release cadence, but it totally makes sense, and it also makes it easier for JavaFX developers. They know that they can align the JavaFX releases with the JDK releases, although technically JavaFX does not require the latest Java. You can still run JavaFX 19 on Java 11 and so.
Yeah, I'm impressed with the evolution that Java has done, and also JavaFX with this new release cycle. Every 6 months it's release and new features coming in and evaluation features. So it's a really great approach, in my opinion. You were mentioning Swing as earlier technology. Pedro, you was mentioning that you made something to combine JavaFX and Swing. Maybe you can compare these technologies?
JavaFX uses a scene graph, whereas Swing, it was immediate mode rendering. So you had to take care of clearing the screen and doing the repaint, where in JavaFX, you kind of like declare what you have in your scene, and JavaFX takes care of the repaint cycle. There's also FXML, which you didn't have in Swing, for instance. It's an XML-like language that you can use to describe your scene. I'd say like HTML to the web. Then you have things like, you have an application that's called Scene Builder. It's like a drag and drop application. What you see is what you get, where you drag and drop controls and you create your UI there in a more easier fashion. The FXML parser will create the controls and the objects from the JavaFX SDK and create your UI based on what you have described in your FXML files. But you don't have to use FXML, it's an option, but I think most applications use it. You also have CSS that you didn't have in Swing, very similar to web CSS, where you can style your application using only CSS, and there's a CSS engine that parses your style sheets and styles the application. There's also an advantage of that. There's a library called CSSFX. With CSSFX, you can change the style sheet live, and you can see the changes while the application is running, which is very good because it reduces the time you need to tweak the UI. There's things like 3D, which you didn't have in Swing, 3D rendering. There's a video control that allows you to play video that you didn't have in Swing. There's an audio control to play audio. You can also do immediate rendering, like in Swing. There's a canvas node that you can use to do that. And yeah, and I think there's more controls, I think, also.
So there were different UI tools within Java. There was Swing, AVT, JavaFX. How are they all maintained? Are they all alive still? Or is JavaFX now the way to go?
As a programmer, I would say JavaFX is the way to go. As I understand it, Oracle is not enhancing Swing at all. It still provides it as part of the JDK, but it just does fixes where need to, and it doesn't enhance it. So if you want a modern UI, you really need to go with JavaFX. Plus, JavaFX you can use in the mobile and embedded environment.
Yeah, and that's a topic I want to come to with you, Gail. You wrote a blog post or a series of blog posts actually on Foojay. As one example, only the Wordish application, so to play a game, which it's a 5-part series, I think, about the whole process of building an app, which is a great way to get into this technology and how to use it. Can you give more insight in this series of posts?
As you mentioned, I did 2 series. The first one was a game called Tilt Maze. And the reason I chose that game, it's based on a game that you can buy that's a wooden box that allows you to control a rolling ball through a maze. And I did it because I wanted to prove to myself how portable the accessing hardware sensors on various devices were. So the accelerometer on your phone device, you can take readings. I took readings in an animation loop that controlled a rolling ball. So in that series, I detailed in very, very minute steps how you write an application, get it on various phones, both Android and iOS, and then get it into the App Store. And the game itself was pretty small in terms of JavaFX code. So for the Wordish example, it was more about JavaFX. And as I wrote, I was playing Wordle myself, which is a game in the New York Times. And as I was playing it, I said, oh, this would be a great example for JavaFX because it uses animation, specialized controls. It has a little bit of algorithm stuff about how you determine what the letters are. And so in doing the implementation, I actually used new stuff. I had listened to a series of blog posts by José Palmade on using streams and records. And I said, okay, I'm going to do that. And then I realized that I could use CSS pseudo classes for controlling the look of the different controls based on properties. And that turned out to be a really nice example in that. So all these things just appeared. I didn't know ahead of time what I was going to run into. So I would say it's a tutorial-based series of articles on using JavaFX in either a mobile or desktop environment.
It has some very neat examples with how you animate these letters if they turn and how they animate. So yeah, it's really impressive. What I love about Java is that you can do amazing things with only a few lines of code, and that's again what you also show in these examples. Back to you, Pedro. You also have this cat application which is documented on Foojay. Can you talk a bit about this, because it looks pretty complex? It's a whole building and then measuring the different spaces in this building. What does it actually do?
So it's like a bit like AutoCAD, but it's used specifically for measuring the energy efficiency of buildings. The target audience in this application was Australia, but I'm sure it can be retrofitted to be used elsewhere. It was like AutoCAD. You could build a building, change the materials, create your own materials. You would create the walls, the windows, the openings, ceilings, the floors, and set the materials that each thing had. And this would influence the energy efficiency of the building.
In the notes with this podcast, I will also add the links to all these articles so that the listeners can easily find them back, because yeah, some of these applications are really impressive. I think the same goes for you, Dirk. You built these kind of applications the whole day. There are some very impressive videos online with also your flex charts and stuff like that. What kind of applications do you build for your customers?
All kinds of different domains, really. The planning and scheduling applications, they were used, for example, for Emirates Airlines, where they try to optimize the schedule of their aircraft. Another customer of mine, they produce manufacturing execution systems where they schedule the machines in a factory and they try to optimize that. FlexCanFX was also used for architecture offices where they allocated people to projects. So it's very, very different and actually quite wonderful, because it shows you how you can end up in all kinds of different domains when you're in software engineering and you learn a little bit about this and that. That's what makes this job so exciting, right? Yeah, and all these different projects that I did, that's all of those, they went into this real world applications talk that I gave at various conferences, and that you can also find on the JFX Central website, that I guess you want me to talk about now too.
Definitely. So since a short time, I'm contributing to this website with the links of the week, but the website was already there for quite some time.
Yeah.
And it's actually, should we call it a showcase for JavaFX?
Absolutely. Yeah. It was created because JavaFX was lacking a home on the web, a single point of entry where interested parties could quickly find out more about the entire JavaFX ecosystem without having to search for all the pieces all over the web. And a lot of people talked about this very often. You can find it in many forums that people complained that other languages had this single point of entry. You go there and then you find out everything that there is to know about programming language, the entire ecosystem. I think a lot of people hope that maybe Oracle would provide something like that, but because, we know what happened. That never happened. They have tons of, they still have tons of tutorials on their website, but not really a place where when you're new, you find out not only how to code this, but also what is out there, what can I use? I wanted to change that. So I started by having a page on my website, dlsc.com, my company website. So a little shameless plug here, dlsc.com. And I had a little page there where I collected various links related to JavaFX stuff. A lot of people do similar stuff for other technologies. And then I also saw a GitHub repository, I think it was called AwesomeFX, that also had this curated list of JavaFX resources. And that was pretty cool. And then I kind of gave up on my links because, okay, this guy's already doing all of that. And I really like the idea of having such a curated list of resources, but I thought that it should be presented in a more attractive way, in a way that reflects our domain, UI development. So I really wanted to see this stuff inside a rich user interface, okay? So eat your own dog food kind of thing. Okay, so I thought that it would make a lot of sense to have a dedicated website to showcase JavaFX and to also use JavaFX itself to create this website. And thanks to JPro and their technology and all the support that I got from Florian Kiermaier, we were able to finally come up with a website and publish it all online. And the data for the website, that's actually coming from a public GitHub repository. So whoever wants to can contribute, and they can add their own library, their own products, and their own real-world applications if they want to. And that's probably one of the most important sections on JFX Central, the real-world apps, because I frequently meet people that say they really want to use JavaFX, but they need to convince their managers that this is a good technology and that there are actually people out there using it, because most of the applications developed with JavaFX, they're behind company walls, and people cannot talk about it like Petro. You cannot talk about that Fortune 500 company somewhere in the US. And I have a couple of projects that I also cannot talk about, but I always try to make companies talk about their projects because I think it's important. So this section on JFX Central, it's a big catalog of, I don't know how many now, 20 plus real-world applications with tons of screenshots. And now people can go there and they can point their managers to it and they can say, well, look, these guys did it. They created, space exploration software with it, or an MES or a PPS system, or I don't know what, okay? So it's all in there. I hope that makes life easier for potential JavaFX developers.
And for JavaFX developers, there's also the list of libraries. A lot of them are from Pedro and other contributors. So people who have made a JavaFX library can just add it. As you say, it's another GitHub project where you can just add.
And it has a gateway also to the OpenJFX project. So people can easily get in touch with that. They can realize, okay, there's JavaFX, the product, but then there's OpenJFX, the project. And if they want to submit a bug report, for example, there's a big red button right there. And if they want to know the roadmap of JavaFX or OpenJFX, then they can see all the pull requests that are in the pipeline. They can see which ones have been integrated, which ones are waiting for reviews, and so on.
We already mentioned that JavaFX applications run everywhere. It's Java, right ones run everywhere. Now you mentioned that your website is also created with JavaFX and you're using JPro to run it in the browser. Yep. I know that there are several projects ongoing to make JavaFX also a perfect companion for web apps. I think WebFX is another one. Johan, I think Gluon is also working in this topic.
We work together with Jaroslav Turek from used to work for the Oracle Labs on Gravium, and so he has a project back to browser, which is sort of transpired from Java bytecode to JavaScript. And there we added a renderer. So we created a JavaFX pipeline that uses WebGL to render the JavaFX code. And there are a bunch of other initiatives. From a technical point, it's not extremely complicated. It's not rocket science. So you need two things. First, be able to run the Java code in a browser as a JavaScript, or enough transpirers for that. And the second is you need to have a pipeline that renders in such a web browser, and that and there I think the WebGL in combination with back to browser is a great choice. What I see as a main obstacle there is that it is pretty hard already to explain to people that Java works on mobile and embedded. It's even harder to explain to people that you can also use real native Java code on the web, because then people are saying, yeah, but there are tons of web frameworks. And I honestly think that JavaFX is a really great choice for creating web applications, especially because those 12 million Java developers can use their favorite Java language to create web pages, and they don't have to learn HTML or write some JavaScript hacks. It's really very well possible to do that, and I highly recommend it. The main issue that I see with it is the image of the industry. And Java is unfortunately way too often associated with cloud-only, cloud-native development. That's of course because that's where most of the money is. And Java is great in this area. Most of the eyes of Java, and especially the marketing budgets in the bigger companies, go to this cloud space. The client space is less attractive from a revenue point. Well, at least if you look at the client only. But what other companies have is they have a client technology that then feeds into their cloud services. So this is also something that we do with Gluon, with CloudLink, where you can link your JavaFX application to cloud software. But because Oracle is really mainly only interested in databases, cloud applications, what we see in the number of contributors is that there are many individuals that write JavaFX applications in their spare time and because they technically really like it. But when I talk to those contributors and ask, do you also use this in your company? Then the answer is often, no, I can't convince my manager to do this. And I think therefore initiatives like JFX Central are extremely important, because other client technologies have a broader community with very often developer advocates, and so paid by the big companies who have their client product tied to their cloud. And JavaFX does not have that one. JavaFX does not have a big company that's behind it. And that's one of the strengths, because JavaFX is independent from big companies, but it also means that we have to do the marketing ourselves. And that is one of the hard parts. And that is also why it's so hard convincing people that JavaFX is really great on the web. And I'm extremely grateful to all these people who write blog posts, tutorials, and spread the word about JavaFX. Because from a technical point, we can have the best technology, but if people are not spreading that word, then it's not going to happen, because there's no big company behind it.
And to add to that story, you mentioned it's sometimes a developer in his spare time doing something. I had this wonderful discussion with Sean Phillips, who created a 3D visualization tool for a lot of data based on machine learning and brain experiments. Very amazing stuff. And he indeed created, more in his spare time than in his professional time, a tool to visualize his data fully using Java and JavaFX. We made together a blog post on Foojay, so I will also add a link to that with the videos. And indeed, the things you can build with Java and JavaFX are really impressive. If we go back to the libraries, some of those published on JFX Central are from you, Pedro. Can you give some info about some of these libraries that you created?
There's JMetro, which is a JavaFX theme. It's inspired, but it's not a copy of Microsoft's Fluent design system. It also adds functionality to existing controls without creating any coupling by leveraging the FX skins library, which is another library I've created and published. This FX skins library leverages the MVC architecture that is present in all controls of JavaFX. The view and the controller are separated from the model. Developers usually only interact with the model part of a control. FX skins replaces the view part and the controller part of the controls, and the developer won't need to change one line of code. This is done through the style sheet. These skins will add more functionality to the controls used in your applications. For example, there's a slider skin that FX skins provides that when the user presses and moves the thumb of a slider, it will show a pop-up with the exact value that the slider has with an animation. And it also shows a fill color between the start of the slider track and the thumb. Also, it adds new CSS properties to each control, so you can further tweak each JavaFX control through these CSS properties. For instance, you can tweak the animations that these new skins provide. So other libraries that I created also FX Ribbon, which is a ribbon control for JavaFX. It's based on the Microsoft ribbon that you can see on Word, Excel, but also on other Microsoft applications like Windows Explorer, Microsoft Paint, etc. I think this is a control that can be used to simplify complex user interfaces that have a significant number of commands. There's also FX charts, which adds some functionality to and the chart to JavaFX. And finally, there's what I already mentioned, a control called JX scene, which allowed to integrate a JavaFX scene in a Swing application in the first versions of JavaFX, but now it's become obsolete because JavaFX already provides right now that control.
What I find amazing about these libraries is most of the time the developer made it because he needed it himself, but took the time to really publish it, make it available to everyone, and make a Maven artifact of it. I really like also the work of Gerrit Grunwald, who is also one of these JavaFX experts. So he also created these charts, and then the TilesFX I use the whole time for dashboard-like applications. Dirk, are there other ones you want to highlight of the many lists of libraries?
There are so many, and JavaFX has been around for a while, and people contributed a lot. And I also always try to make it a habit that when I have a customer project and they want a specific feature, just like recently, my customer wanted to have a notification UI that looked like what Apple is doing. When these things slide in, you have a new email, and then they get stacked on top of each other, and you can expand them. And if there are too many, then you can switch. Well, that's actually not an Apple feature. That's a feature that I put in there. But I had to come up with this little mini framework, and those are always the moments when I tell myself, okay, this should really be in a library, and this will be useful for other people. And then I talk to my customers, and I try to convince them that it makes sense to make this an open source control, because then other people will contribute to it. They will find bugs that they haven't run into yet. But they will do them the favor of finding them for them, and hopefully they will also fix them. So some of the projects that I'm maintaining, they've seen quite a few contributions from other people like Preferences FX or Workbench FX and Forms FX. They have been around for some time now. And that's another thing I noticed, once you have released a library like this, sometimes it takes ages before people actually come back to you and contribute something. Sometimes at the end of their project, like, we still have all this stuff. Well, maybe we can contribute it back to this project, and then they submit a pull request. So what I'm trying to say is when you publish a project, a library, don't expect people to contribute immediately. Sometimes it takes a long time. You have to be patient, and when they do, then be happy because they did some work for you. And also, especially CalendarFX, for example, that's a huge framework, and there are a lot of projects that need a calendar UI. So there have been a lot of pull requests and contributions from other people. I really like that.
Now, if we go back to mobile, Gail, you talked about this. So I think most people know that JavaFX is a tool to build user interfaces, desktop applications, but you actually made some smartphone applications. There are also some Gluon libraries involved there. What did you use? You mentioned playing a game with rotating your phone. Was that using some Gluon tools?
The process of creating a mobile app, Gluon provides the structure for doing that. And when I tell people how to start, I push them over to the Gluon.start.io page, where you can choose the features that you would want in a mobile application. I've used them, and they're really, really powerful. They have done controls that are skinned specifically for the mobile environment. And the couple of applications that I've done and put on the App Store are really simple. But when you start building complex business applications for the phone, you have to deal with multiple views. And so they have a lot of libraries that you can use to help control the flow of an application going from one view to another. Several years ago, and I haven't updated this application, but I did it again as an example. I did a blood pressure application where you could input your systolic and diastolic and pulse and display that in Gluon's charm list view, which lets you put in icons and calendars, and then from there you can edit and add applications. So it goes to an edit add screen, and from there you can also go to visualize the data. So we use JavaFX charts, but then also bar charts for averages and minimums and maximums. Gluon provides a library where you can use the minimalist dependency injection called Afterburner, and I have found that to be really nice in just making your application more succinct. All of this works because Gluon has used the Graal VM Community Edition JDK to produce the native images. And they do this with a product called Gluon Substrate, which pulls together all the native libraries that you need, for example, for an iOS application. That to me was being able to use the Graal VM and the work that Gluon did with the Substrate Maven plugin was a big step, in my view, in making mobile application development much simpler, more powerful. Performance is great, size is reasonable. So to me, it was a big step. And I've just kind of noticed that JavaFX seems to be just getting more buzz, more views on Twitter and more talk. And I think there's a lot of people out in the community that are talking about JavaFX, using JavaFX. So I really credit that workflow of going to start.gluon.io and beginning your Maven application, but being able to use Graal VM and Gluon Substrate to build a native packaged application. So thank you, Gluon.
I've not done a lot of JavaScript development myself. What I know of all these frameworks and that there is a very big evolution in all these. There's not a lot of stability. There are new Java frameworks popping up and disappearing. Can we say that JavaFX is a lot more stable and will help developers to keep maintaining and extending their application over many years compared to JavaScript? Is there any one of you who dares to stand up against JavaScript? And we have a guest who joined a bit late. Hello, Sean Phillips.
Hi. Yeah, I would love to stand up against it. And I'm not against it in general, but I can answer your question right now. It's not that JavaFX is stable. It is. It's that Java is stable. When you build a house on a strong foundation, you have a strong house. JavaScript is not built on a strong foundation. Excuse me, the UI frameworks that utilize JavaScript are inherently built on, well, flimsy foundation. And so what I see is a lot of people trying to reinvent better and better ways to work around a problem. The problem being the technology in general. And some of these methods that they build, they work, right? They do work. But it should be a red flag as a software engineer, as an engineer in general, when your solution, if you're building up a capability that works around a problem that's inherent with your system, like that's probably not the right way to do it. Whereas in Java, it isn't so much we're working around problems, we're finding the best way to solve the problem given the capability that we have. I use the house analogy. When people say, well, what are you going to do? Use Java for everything? Well, no. Because, if I want to build a birdhouse, I should probably use a hammer. If I want to build a big boy house, I'm going to use a nail gun. You know what I mean? And so you can use your imagination as to which tool Java is versus JavaScript. So I'm very opinionated on these things.
As you joined a bit later, Sean, can you introduce yourself?
Sean Phillips is the full name. I am a software engineer at the Johns Hopkins University Applied Physics Lab. And I am near Washington, D.C. in the United States. My specialty is custom data visualization, and I work in a group that specializes in machine learning operations, a little bit of cyber defense, and generalized data analysis capabilities. And to support that, we have a section in our group which focuses on advanced visualizations, and I'm the supervisor of that section. So our job is to produce visualizations that would be boutique, custom, data intensive, highly interactive. And so a lot of the tools that we develop, we use a variety of technologies, including web user interface frameworks for certain aspects of it. We have many, many tools that we've developed over the past 5 to 10 years, including new tools being developed as we speak that are built using Java, and several of them JavaFX.
I already mentioned a bit earlier that we just published on Foojay an article about the project that you're working on, Sean, to visualize data from a lot of different experiments, a lot of complex data from brain sensors and machine learning models. We already discussed that the JavaFX world provides a lot of libraries. Now you built an amazing application, both using existing libraries, then your own work to visualize this data. What is so great about, you're actually using 3D even in your tool. What is so great about JavaFX and what it can do for your use case?
The use case that you mentioned before, that we are working on the published article for, is for brain-computer interfaces. And that type of problem is one of those classic dense data type problems where it's not obvious what a solution is. It's not obvious what's going right or what's going wrong with your setup. There's calibration issues. It's a decoding problem. There is no closed form equation that gives you an answer. There's no math that says, yea, verily, this is what is happening exactly right now. And so at the same time, this isn't crossing the street. It's very complex stuff. And by the way, I'm just the data viz guy learning from these people, these neuroscientists. So I want to say, like, they're doing the real work. I'm just trying to give them tools that make their lives easier, but it's so critical. And I have a point. Why JavaFX for something like this? The amount of data that you have to process in a sort of non-obvious way, and the pace that it's coming in with, and the graphics that you would need to sort of invent in order to, these are not standard types of graphics, to try to represent that information, and then also provide interactivity, and also have it perform well at speed. when you start putting all these things together, it's not really a JavaFX thing that you got to ask yourself. Now you got to start asking whether or not your tech stack is even appropriate. A lot of the initial experimentation that they have is done using like MATLAB, sometimes some Python scripts. And at first that gets the job done. But these things are very slow. They're only good in small little bursts. They can only collect a little bit of data. There's no interaction. And so whenever something goes wrong, they can't even tell you. The neuroscientists often can't say why their decoder isn't working or this and that. Now they have ideas, and it has to do with the complex process of decoding from a hyperdimensional input space down to a lower dimensional decision space. This is a human-machine teaming problem, if you will. Human-machine teaming is something that we worry about a lot here at where I work, and also in just generally speaking in defense and in the civilian industries. Java as a technology platform, just generally speaking, is well suited for all these things. And JavaFX as a rendering toolkit and as a visualization UI framework being built on top of Java and done so in a way that's very easy to use to do these types of things. You put these two things together and it is one of those perfect solutions. There are other tech stacks that would work. And I'm not here to say that you can't do, if you're going to do brain-computer interfaces, you have to use Java and JavaFX. That, of course, that's false. But there's obviously a whole tier of technology stacks that just aren't going to cut it. They're just not going to cut it. The amount of work you'd have to put in the software development-wise to get them even to the party would be way too much. The tool that you saw, I developed in less than a year, and it was part-time. I've only had part-time funding to develop this. This is not my full-time job. I have other projects I can't talk about that I work on. Like if my day is a pie, I have these many slices to work on. And that's a testament to Java and JavaFX, that the fact that I'm able to pull these things together and make this fully functional tool that quickly. And it's not only is it usable for this one very, very boutique situation, brain-computer interface calibration, but we're able to right now, we're able to reapply it to machine learning model explainable AI. And all I had to do is make a few small tweaks to the interface, a few small tweaks to the data ingestion, and it just works. I don't know, did I answer your question, or I'd go on? Was that a rant that I went on? I'm not sure.
That was a perfect answer.
Okay.
And that's even a perfect conclusion, because we mentioned now all the different technologies. You joined at the perfect time to to collect everything together that we discussed. Is there anyone who wants to add something? Because this is the moment before we really close off.
I want to thank everybody on this panel. For everybody here has done something to make my life better or easier or more fun. I mean, Frank, I just like chatting with this stuff about you. So the fact that you reached out to me has made my life better, right? And obviously, Johan with Gluon, I wouldn't be here without the work that he's done. And Dirk, without your promotion and you've been pushing and driving this community. And Gail, I've been interacting with you since before the JavaFX days, actually with the NetBeans platform days.
Right.
But in particular, I want to thank Pedro, because I use his CSS styles and some of his other libraries in that tool that you saw, Trinity. And everybody tells me how awesome it looks. And they're always like, what's your CSS? What's your CSS? And I'm like, I got you, fam. That's JMetro right there. And I say, you want dark or light? He's got them both. I promote your stuff so much. And I just want to say, I've never met you, and thank you I've been using your styles and I've been using some of the other stuff you've contributed to some other libraries for the past, since 2015 is when I started using JMetro. I want to say some form of it. And then when I changed jobs a few years back, I kept the CSS with me. I left the code, but I kept the CSS, and then I've been adopting it from there. So thank you very much, man.
I remember when you said that you were building an ASA application and it used a small library that I created, which was JMetro. It was fantastic, because having an ASA application use, even if something little like I've built, it was amazing. So thank you also for publicizing that you were using JMetro. Although I'm sure you could have done it without it, but thanks.
It's really good. It's so good that other JVM toolkits that use JavaFX have started adopting it here. I'm putting in the chat a tweet. So we have another project, and I can't share with you the screenshots because they haven't been publicly released, but this tweet is, of course, publicly available. It's a tweet that shows a picture from the White House during the height of the COVID pandemic in 2020, early 2021. And the binders on the laps of the president and the House of Representatives and those people, this is a weekly briefing, have charts that were produced by a JavaFX-based application that we built right down the hall. They adopted your CSS after they saw it on all my tools that I built. So A, JavaFX is used in the fight against COVID. Okay, so right there. And two, so is your CSS. So there.
Amazing.
I love this community.
So you just found out that your CSS library has been on the office in the White House.
Well, the tool that produces the charts uses your CSS. But yeah, sure, why not? Yeah, sure.
But yeah, it's amazing to know this. As a library developer, it's amazing that to see your library being used in other people's applications, and applications like what Sean does. He does some really amazing applications like the NASA applications, and it really motivates me, and I'm sure Dirk also has this feeling that it's great to see your work being used.
Yeah, as a library developer, you should really make it a habit to go to conferences every once in a while, because that's when you run into people and then they see you in person and then they tell you, oh, by the way, I'm using your stuff, So Sean, for example, I know he uses hidden sites pane from Controls.fx in the
I love that thing.
Yeah. So yeah, I know we talked about it when you gave the presentation with Diane. I don't know which Oracle Code 1 or Java 1. Yeah, back in the day, several years ago. But yeah, you told me that you were using that and how grateful you were and that you didn't have to do this yourself. So, and that's always great. So go to conference, people who develop libraries, you should all go to conferences and meet your fans.
There are more fans out there than we realize. There are so many people that are using Java and JavaFX, and they're not vocal like a lot of people in other technology arenas. And I used to wonder why. Like, why aren't more people more obnoxiously loud like me? And I realized it's because they're all busy doing real work. They've got their heads down doing work, and they don't have time for a lot of the extra crap, like the latest blog article about how great some flavor of the month UI framework from the JavaScript land is. And then that's when it occurred to me that these are the people that really, really appreciate all the stuff that everybody does in the community. So I don't know. What I don't know is how do we reach out to these people and get, maybe stir up the embers a little bit,
It's something that Johan mentioned before. So JavaFX is really great. We don't have that developer advocacy team around it.
This is actually something that I'm facing every single day for the past 5 years. JavaFX and Java in general, but let's talk about JavaFX and Java on the client, are considered to be great technologies. The number of people that tell me how great JavaFX is and how much they love the work that we do at Gluon, and so it's amazing. If you look at the contributors to OpenJFX and to all the libraries, those are great people. And it's in such a big contrast with the marketing attention that JavaFX gets. If you look at other client frameworks, they're marketing first. So there's some creative person who has a great idea about, and they're probably brainstorming about names first, and then maybe later the technology. JavaFX is the opposite. It's really a technology engineering driven repository created by people who needed to fix real world problems. And therefore, I'm extremely impressed by all the scientific work and visualization that Sean and many others are doing. This is really what drives me, because those applications are really making the world better. And I have a background in science myself, and I'm doing work with quantum computing. We also use JavaFX to visualize things. When I see how JavaFX is used in medical systems, healthcare sciences, so this is really what motivates me. But it is very hard to keep talking about the relevance of JavaFX when you're in a world where cloud native advertisements, marketing driven things are really what's high on the agenda and where the big money is. I really think that model needs to be changed somehow, because great technologies like JavaFX, which are worse in marketing or negatively biased in many projects. The number of times that myself and probably everyone on this call here has to explain to a manager, you should use JavaFX for this because, and then you need to explain, you need to keep explaining. Well, if you would say, let's use Flutter, it's from Google, so it must be great. Okay, yeah, let's do that. But if you say, let's do JavaFX, oh, but Oracle killed JavaFX, didn't they do that? So many existing UI frameworks have positive marketing from a big company, and JavaFX has negative marketing from a big company. So we have to fight that, and at the same time we have to work on the code base, which is also extremely complex and focused, and it does not pay. I once talked to an Oracle VP about NASA is using JavaFX, and he said, wait, NASA doesn't have money, so we are not interested in that. That needs to change, because we really want JavaFX to be on the radar, not because I personally have an affiliation with it, but because I strongly believe that with Java and JavaFX we can improve humanity a lot. That's my mission, actually.
I have a question for Johan. Do you think the recent announcement from Oracle that they are offering JavaFX bits will improve the situation?
Well, at the very least, this will give me more time to write code, because I now can easily refer to a tweet or an Oracle website where they have the JDK bits, instead of always keep reiterating that JavaFX is not that. Now, it has to be said that Oracle, as I said before, always kept engineering resources on JavaFX, great people, and I really like to work with them, especially Kevin Rushford, who is my colleague of OpenJFX. He's from Oracle, and he's a fantastic person to work with, extremely knowledgeable, and he has a great team. So from an engineering point, Oracle has been an excellent partner, and there are amazing people working in the OpenJDK team. But this now is finally again something from product management or whatever they call it at Oracle, where they publicly talk again about JavaFX, and that will, I think, definitely help us. It's been a few years since they talked about it in public, and I think this should at least convince others that JavaFX is still alive.
Okay, maybe we can conclude with what we can expect in the next version or versions of JavaFX, Johan?
This is a question that I often get, and I try not to disappoint the audience, but one of the major goals of OpenJFX is to provide a stable framework that others can use to build on top of. So stability and making sure that we support the latest operating system, the latest drivers, and everything that's under the hood. That is our core goal with OpenJFX. There are so many libraries out there, and we want to, we see ourselves as sort of contributors to those libraries. So those libraries are often in dedicated areas. It's very hard to create a control that can be used in the same way across all the different verticals. So what we try to do with JavaFX is to provide the framework so that others can build on top of it. Don't expect extremely cool niche features or controls to be in OpenJFX directly, but expect that from libraries. And when it turns out that there's something very generic, then we can do it in OpenJFX. The main goal from OpenJFX is making sure that whatever those library creators create can be used on all those devices that support JavaFX. And that means on desktop devices, but also on mobile and on small embedded devices. So that is where the strength, I believe, of JavaFX is, making sure that it renders, but also that it renders extremely performant, and that it's on par with the today's standard for graphical frameworks.
And that brings us back to that strong foundations that Sean was talking about, that Java and JavaFX provide these strong foundations, and that amazing stuff can be built on top of it. Okay, Thanks a lot, everyone. It was an amazing talk. I again learned a lot. I will make sure that we have all the links added to the show notes that people can visit all the amazing work that we talk about. So thank you very much. First of all, of course, my guests of this episode and you for listening. Keep an eye on Foojay for future articles about development and everything related to the Java world.
Give me a foo, give me a J, give me the friends of OpenJDK.